That one word, empathy, that is so inherently part of being a musician is also inherently part of being a successful marketer.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know that I'm known as the speech coach for executives? Because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And we do that through one-on-one coaching or group training for the team. On this podcast, you will hear insights and advice from communication experts from around the world. My guest today is James Hipkin. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about James. 1, over 40 years, James has worked in marketing and advertising at a high level. His clients included Sprint, Apple, Wells Fargo Online Bank, Nestle, and Toyota. I think we've heard of those names. 2, since 2010, James Hipkin has built his clients' businesses with digital marketing. James is passionate about websites and helping the rest of us understand online marketing. And 3, he started with a degree in music and spent 6 years touring with rock bands, including Rush. Maybe we can get him to play a few tunes for us here before shifting to the business world. James Hipkin, welcome to Your Intended Message.
Hey, George, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Delighted to be talking with you here today, and I know it's going to be insightful because I believe that anyone coming from a music background brings a special perspective to how we perceive the world around us, how we perceive messages and how we send messages. I think it adds a sense that a person who is not a musician doesn't get. And I say that because I was a musician of sort.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was also a musician of sorts. It was a passion that my passion far exceeded my talent, but perhaps is how I ended up in marketing and advertising. But the key thing that I think you're getting at here is in order to be a successful musician, you have to have empathy. And that ability to both listen to and accept what's going on around you, the reality of other perspectives and other participants, is a key thing that separates journeyman marketing from marketing that actually impacts, marketing that brings value to the customers and to the business. That one word, empathy, that is so inherently part of being a musician is also inherently part of being a successful marketer.
And let's clarify for listeners, and empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is understanding how other people might be feeling.
Feeling, thinking, struggling, whatever it might be. I sometimes describe this as most people are practicing inside-out marketing. This is akin to a business owner standing on his rooftop, shouting at the world at large and telling them, "My God, I'm awesome." Right? The world at large doesn't care. The world at large has their own problems that they're trying to solve, their own struggles, their own journey from, I recognize I have this thing that I need to do, through to actually making the purchase decision. And that being empathetic towards what your ideal customer is dealing with, who they are, what they're dealing with, the journey that they are on, is what separates like marketing that's just contributing to the noise and marketing that breaks through the noise.
And inside out, that's when I'm telling you how great I am and you better hire me and hurry up, sign this contract and don't worry what you're going to get because I'm great. Versus, what's the opposite of that?
Outside in. looking at the outside and understanding how the outside is coming towards you, so that rather than interrupting their journey, you're supporting their journey. Because when you're supporting your journey, each one of those microtransactions that you have, and particularly in the B2B world, but this applies to all marketing, those microtransactions generate trust. And trust generates relationship. The ultimate holy grail here is that the purchase stops being a sale. And the purchase becomes the next logical step in your ideal customer's journey. When you've achieved this, you've got a customer for life, and there's nothing more valuable than a customer who stays with you for a long time.
And that's true. And marketers sometimes talk about the lifetime value of a client. So the initial expense cost to obtain the client is not measured against the first sale, but against the probable lifetime value.
Right. And how do you set yourself up to maximize that lifetime value? Well, you don't set yourself up by tricking them into doing something. You set yourself up for a maximum lifetime value by building that trust, building that relationship all through the sales process. When I was working in loyalty marketing, we had a researcher involved, and I don't remember any of the output from the research study, but I do remember one sentence that he said during the preamble to the readout of the research. And he said, in his experience, now this is an expert who does loyalty research, in his experience, 90% of loyalty problems can be traced to a flawed sales process. That one sentence has informed so much of what I've done throughout my career, because when you can focus your marketing on bringing value to your customers, those customers will bring value to you.
And where does the website fit into this journey?
Well, the website in this modern online world is the hub. It is the center of the universe is from the customer's point of view. It may not be the center of the universe from the business owner's point of view, but it should be from a marketing perspective. Because the website is where your value emanates out from, and the website is where you're attracting your ideal customers back to. They're going to go to the website before they pick up the phone and call you. Before they fill out a form, they're going to the website. And that brings up another point. When I talk to business owners about their website, I'll ask them, so what's the primary objective of your website? Right? And I'll usually get a litany of things that they want the website to do. And we'll have a quick conversation about the definition of the word primary. There can only be one. And they'll usually settle on conversion. It's almost always wrong. From the customer's point of view, the primary objective of the website is not conversion, it's confirmation. They're on their journey to try to solve their problem, and they're arriving at the website with the intent of, do these people understand my problem? Do they have a viable solution for my problem? Is that viable solution believable? All of these things are happening before any thought about conversion. If all you do is if you lead with buy now, click here, learn more, sign up, you're interrupting their journey. Okay. Another example of this it's a bit controversial, but it emphasizes the point I'm trying to make here. I want people to stop saying call to action. Yeah, it was really shocking. George's eyes opened up.
I'm listening.
Everybody has told business owners from day one, you have to have a call to action. You have to have a call to action. You have to have a call to action. Right? But think about it. From the customer's point of view, a call to action is a marketer shouting at the customer and telling them what to do. People don't want to be shouted at, and they don't want to be told what to do. What I want you to do instead is start thinking in terms of creating people like you pathways. These are call outs to subsegments in your audience, inviting them to follow a pathway to learn more about the thing that they're trying to solve. Now, functionally, a people like you pathway and a call to action, functionally exactly the same thing. But the mindset shift is important because the call to action is inside out. A pathway is outside in.
Can you give us an example, a contrast between a call to action and a correct way to have the inside out, the outside in?
Well, for example, you may have in the hero section of your website, you'll have hopefully a benefit statement, something that communicates to a visitor that you get them. And then immediately below that, you might have 2 columns or 3 columns with a headline, an image, and maybe a sentence or 2 and a button. In each of those columns, the headline and the image calls out to subsegments in your audience. For example, we recently redesigned a website for a business that they're a flour mill. They do stone ground organic flour, and they really have 2 audiences. There's the beginner bakers and there's the artisan bakers. Now, beginner bakers have a whole different set of questions that they're trying to resolve versus an artisan baker who is very experienced and very knowledgeable, wants to understand the science. So we created 2 pathways on the web. We actually created 3. There's a 3rd pathway for the online store. But the 2 main people like you pathways are beginner bakers and artisan bakers. And by doing that, we're streaming the audience that arrives at the site, because normally people have heard about this through a friend or through social media post or whatever, and they've gone to the website to check them out. And then they see this calling it, that's me. So they select that pathway. And when they select the pathway, 2 very powerful things have happened. They've told you exactly who they are, and they've given you permission to give them more information by virtue of choosing to select that pathway and going to the landing page that the pathway takes them to. That's supporting the journey that the customer is on. And that kind of microtransaction, I have selected this pathway as a microtransaction. When it pays off with the content being so germane to what they're looking for, that's a microtransaction that creates value. And those microtransactions that create value is what creates relationship and what draws people along their journey so that the purchase becomes the next logical step in their journey versus something they feel like they've been tricked into.
And most of us probably have more than one target audience with our product or service. So is that a good idea to have separate pages on our website or to have separate websites?
Separate pages on your website. I mean, it's hard enough to get a website to rank and to track you don't want to create unnecessary confusion. How many websites does Amazon.com have? How many stores exist inside of Amazon.com?
A lot.
Exactly. So, and you actually want the interaction because you're trying to stimulate these microtransactions, because if the microtransaction delivers value, it builds trust, it builds relationship. So again, it's a little controversial, and I'm not a big fan of unnecessary clicks, but a click used strategically can be very powerful. And this is an example of using a click strategically.
So click here if you are a beginner baker. Click here if you are an artisan. Right.
Another example, I worked with a woman who was a paid public speaker. She did keynotes, $10,000, and she'll come to your event and talk to your audience. When it got right down to it, when we went through she had 3 segments in her audience, 3 different kinds of people. hired her. There were event project managers whose primary goal here was don't make me look bad. There were corporate HR directors who hired her to come in and speak to their executives about being better communicators. And there were senior executives, usually women, who'd been promoted into a situation where suddenly they were doing public speaking and they had absolutely no preparation for this. Other than the gender being basically the same across the board, these three groups have nothing to do. They're very different. So when she was just regurgitating everything about herself on the homepage and asking the user to sort through all this and figure out what was important to them, she wasn't getting much traction. When she created these people like you pathways for these three different subsegments of her audience, she was getting a lot more traction, higher quality conversions, higher quality relationships, longer lasting relationships. Simple change, but it's an example of being inside out versus being outside in.
So that sounds like, so the introductory page, the landing page doesn't have a lot of text on it, but it's got maybe these three categories, three buttons that take you to that page with the relevant content.
Exactly. Another thing that we talked about already is that benefit-oriented, reason to stay. Why should I believe you? Another common mistake I see is people will have these wonderful testimonials buried at the bottom of the homepage in a carousel. Nobody looks at the carousel. People don't get to the bottom of the page. You want those one powerful testimonial or what I call a creds bar. That's a very simple bar across the page that might have 3 or 4 logos in it of well-known companies that you work with. You just need to check that box with the user who's visiting the website that you are credible. There's a reason that I should invest my time in you. So that reason to believe needs to be prominently displayed on the page as well. It can be incorporated into the hero section. It could be a cred bar immediately below the hero section. It doesn't need to be the great American novel. It doesn't need to be a carousel of testimonials that nobody reads. One testimonial that's powerful and germane to your audience is more impactful than a carousel buried at the bottom of the homepage with 5 or 6 testimonials in it. And then take those other testimonials and sprinkle them throughout the website, because the things I'm talking about, you should be applying this thought process to every single page on your website. Give me a reason to stay here and make my pathway, the hierarchy, visual hierarchy should be very clear. I should easily understand where I should look next. And these are all factors on every page of your website. And they support this larger idea of, is your marketing inside out or is it outside in?
How long have we got? How long when does a viewer give us when they come to the website?
Well, my line here is you've got 6 ways to engage website visitors in 6 seconds or less. And another interesting little factoid about this, the 6 seconds doesn't start when the page appears. The 6 seconds starts when the page is asked for. So if you're going cheap and cheerful with your hosting and you've got your nephew to make your website and, it takes 4.5 seconds to load, you've just used up a lot of that time real estate. A business website should load in a second or less. And so 6 seconds. Then the second thing to think about, again, from the customer's perspective, when they ask for a web page, their very first thought, and it's instinct, it's the limbic brain, right? It's not a conscious thought, but am I in the right place? Right? So make your branding clear. Don't get fancy. People expect to see the company's logo in the upper left-hand corner of the page. Don't put it somewhere else. I don't care what your designer says. Put it in the upper left-hand corner and recognize what people are looking for. If they're looking for George Torok, your name needs to be in that upper left-hand corner, not some exotic company name and logo that you've spent too much money to have developed, because that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody's name. Now, if you are doing a good job of branding your business name, then you're fine. But recognize from the user's perspective, from the visitor's perspective, what are they looking for, and make it instantaneously recognizable. Consistent use of color. These are all subtle things, but they add up. If your website is blues and grays, your social media posts should be blues and grays. Consistent use of fonts. If you're using Roboto Condensed for headlines on the website, you should use Roboto Condensed for headlines in your advertising. These are subtle things, but you don't want people spending time thinking about, am I in the right place? Because you've only got 6 seconds. You want this to be instantaneously impactful. Somebody gets to the page and they recognize, I'm in the right place, right? Then they're going to move on to the next thing. Give me a benefit-oriented reason to stay. And this is the thing we talked about before, about that opening headline should be benefit-oriented. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about them. Address their concerns, right? And then make their pathway clear. And this is the conversation we had about call to action versus people like you pathways. And then the final thing is make the content easy to consume. Lots of white space. Understand visual hierarchy. Make it really instinctive so that people's eyes know where to go next. People instinctively view a page. Most people in Western cultures, from the upper left-hand corner to the lower right-hand corner, is how people scan the page. Don't put your button, your call to action, in the lower left-hand corner of the hero section, because that's the least eye-tracked spot on the page, right? I see this over and over again because designers don't think about it this way. UX people think about it this way, but there's a difference between a UX person and a designer. Graphic designer is thinking in terms of balance and color and all, and it's powerful, important stuff. A user experience designer is thinking in terms of how do people's eyes track? How do people use the web page? How am I going to support the journey that this person is on?
And James, let's clarify for listeners, what's the hero section?
Hero section is the banner across the top of the page. So it's below the header, which is where the navigation sits. Hero section, then there's body. The hero section is the first thing that people see. And then the body is where you put your creds bar and your testimonial and your pathways, because you want to draw people down the page in a natural way.
What about the importance of SEO, search engine optimization? Is that still relevant?
That's a good question. It's an important question. My general answer for most businesses is no. You should be aware of SEO principles. You shouldn't be doing anything badly. But the reality is, it is such hard work. It's such a long game to generate traffic through SEO, because you're competing with huge businesses, with huge impact and huge budgets and giant sites. It's just very, very difficult to achieve traction. Now, but let's think about SEO from the other way around, because SEO is still very important. And the underutilized part of SEO, people spend a lot of time talking about keyword research and all that good stuff. But the other half of that keyword research coin is search intent. If you think about the keyword research as a tool for you to understand what people are searching for and the intent that they have, that helps inform what kind of content you should be creating at various points in the journey. For example, if a keyword has an informational search intent, that's a mid-funnel activity. People are doing research. They're trying to figure out what it is they should do. They're looking for informational. So create your social media posts around that's informational search intent. Whether you rank for that word on your website or not is irrelevant. You're getting insights into what your ideal customer is looking for at this point in their journey. Now, if a keyword has a commercial or a transactional search intent, that's much lower in the funnel. I'll give you an example. We're in the process of adding an e-commerce capability to a large corporate website that we've been working with for more than 10 years. And I had this conversation with the marketing director. He's like, just use the posts that we already have for the store. And I'm like, we can't do that because the posts you already have are ranking really well. This is a site that gets over 7 figures in traffic every month. This is a big business. The posts you have are ranking really well against informational keywords. The product listings that we need to create in the e-commerce store need to rank against commercial and transactional keywords. So that's where we can't just use the same content that's in the post that's already on your site in the product listing. It has to be adapted and changed to correspond with where the consumer is in their journey, where they are in the funnel. They get to the product listing, they're deeper in the funnel, they're looking to make a transaction.
So the assumption is that if the visitor is looking at a list, a catalog of product, they're not they're past the initial get acquainted stage. They're now trying to make a choice.
That's correct. So if you think the classic funnel is awareness, consideration, prospecting, decision. Well, informational keywords are very important in the consideration and to a degree in the prospecting section. Commercial keywords are very important in the prospecting section and to a degree in the decision section. And transactional search intent keywords are very important in the purchase, right? So that's where SEO can still be a very powerful tool for a business in terms of understanding how do I map my content against the consumer's journey.
And how does AI play into all this?
We're using AI extensively. We're using it primarily as a workhorse. I'll give you an example. A key part of the outside-in thought process is having an avatar of your ideal customer and having a journey map where you've actually documented and mapped out the journey, steps in the journey, the questions that they're asking, the obstacles they're trying to overcome. It's all mapped out. When I was, involved with multi-8-figure budgets, we had the resources to hire a researcher, and they would do focus groups, and they would interview people and surveys, and then smart people would analyze all of this, and they would generate an avatar and a buyer's journey map. Typical cost for a study like that might be $50,000, right? With AI, we are able to give our clients an interview guide. Use this interview guide to interview 6 to 10 of your best customers. Record those interviews. Give us the recordings. Then we use the AI to transcribe the recordings and analyze the recordings and to generate an avatar and a buyer's journey map that's based on data. It's not based on what the business owner thinks or what the marketing director thinks. It's based on what actual customers say. And now, is it as good as what my colleague Susan, who helped me write the interview guide, can do for $50,000? No. Is it a vast improvement over nothing at all or making it up? Absolutely. So for a fraction of the cost, you're getting 80 or 85 or 90% of what would typically cost $50,000. And when you've got those insights, when you know who you're talking to what they're like as people, what the problems are they're trying to solve, what's the transformation they're looking to achieve. You've got the insights that you need to create marketing and content that's going to break through the noise. When you understand the journey, the questions, the obstacles at each stage of the journey, say perhaps married with search intent analysis on keywords, you understand what to talk about. What do you need to talk about to attract them into the top of the funnel? What kind of content should be in your email marketing that's supporting the mid-funnel and building the relationship? What are the keywords and key messages you should put at the purchase point? Each one of these stages is going to be distinct. And in the absence of information, you're just guessing.
Is that a matter of A/B testing?
You can do A/B testing, and I would still do A/B testing regardless of whether you've got the avatar and journey map, because, you're still making a subjective decision, hopefully based on data, but you're still making a subjective decision. Testing is, when I talk about marketing, I describe marketing as a three-legged stool. The seat of the stool is the SMART objective. Start there. What is it you're trying to accomplish? And then the three legs are, what's the marketing strategy? And that's the who and the why. And you get that from the avatar. The second leg is, what's the marketing plan? That's the how and the when, and you get that from the journey map. And the third leg is measurement. Actually measure what you're doing so that you can water the flowers and prune the weeds. This stuff's not that hard. It's not that complicated. When you think about it like this, and you've got, because if you take one of the legs away from your stool, it's going to fall over. And when I analyze websites and digital marketing campaigns, the most common problem I see is an absence of strategy. They don't understand who they're talking to, and they don't understand why that person is looking for a solution. They've got the how and the when all worked out because, they're just throwing stuff out there in great quantities, but it's not connected. And then I'll ask them, so is YouTube working for you? And they'll look at me and I don't know. Because they're not measuring.
Key reminder to measure, yes. James, speaking of measure, for those people that want to have a review of their website, they can go to the domain 6secondsorless.com, and 6 is the word 6, S-I-X, 6secondsorless.com, where they can arrange for a review, an audit of their website.
Yes, I'll look at the homepage. Maybe if we have time, we'll look at the About Us page, and we'll have a conversation around these things that we're talking about today. Who's your primary audience? What problem are they trying to solve? What's the journey that they're on? And does your website support who they are, what they're looking for, and why they're there?
Sounds like a series of key critical questions that people need to ask themselves when they're, one, thinking about they're putting their marketing plan together, and two, enacting it through their online presence.
Right. And this is common with businesses that are in the sort of, 7-figure range. Once you get there, the growth you had is hard to replicate. You tend to plateau. How do you break through? How do you start that growth model again? Well, the scrappy DIY marketing that got you where you are is not going to get you to the next level. You need to bring in someone who can really, truly challenge what you're doing, get you to think about things a different way, and start creating marketing that breaks through the noise and supports the journey that your best customer is on. When you do that, you're going to, I'll give you an example. That flour mill I was talking to you about before. We redesigned their website. We redesigned their marketing. We launched it all in January. And within a few months, they were already close to 200% increase in sales.
Wow. That sounds like a good return.
And the changes weren't radical, right? It was a lot of it you might say was subtle, but getting the right message. There's an old direct marketing adage that print it on a poster, put it on your wall, get the right message to the right person at the right time, right? That's everything we've talked about today can be summed up in that one sentence.
Powerful reminder. My guest today is James Hipkin, reminding you that your marketing should not be inside out. It should be outside in. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.